Malcolm Butler, and to a lesser extent, much lesser extent, Joejuan Williams being placed on injured reserve. You know, as far as Butler goes, with Joejuan Williams, you know, we knew that was going to be the case one way or the other. He was not long for this team. He did not play well in the Giants game. And, you know, as far as Butler goes, he's a guy who we're still waiting to see what exactly was going to go on with him and this roster. I would say he was a fringe guy, certainly in the mix. But you look at the decision to move Jonathan Jones to outside cornerback from the slot position to outside cornerback, that should have told you, me, everyone, that the Patriots weren't exactly enamored with what they had outside of Jalen Mills at boundary cornerback. So they moved Jonathan Jones out there, and that just tells you guys like Malcolm Butler, Terrence Mitchell, Joejuan Williams, Shaun Wade, Jack Jones, those guys weren't exactly lighting the world on fire as far as the Patriots are concerned in the early going of camp. So that, you know, that leads the coaches to be watching film and be like, is this the best we have? Maybe we should try Jonathan Jones out there, even though he hasn't been out on the outside in years in this scheme. So that, I think, was the genesis and should give you some insight to how the Patriots see their boundary cornerback position, which is really starting cornerback. So Malcolm Butler and Joejuan Williams both went on injured reserve today. Their seasons are over. Could be the end of the road for both of them. You know, we don't know. I'm not sure whether or not both could, once they're healthy, however long it takes them, could they be released with an injury settlement? I think that's still a possibility. And in that case, they would be able to return to the Patriots at a certain point in time. But anyways, let's not get into that. Right, as of right now, those guys are not in the plans for the cornerback. So what's left at cornerback for the Patriots? Right now, my pecking order as far as their boundary cornerbacks, Jalen Mills is clear-cut number one for me. I thought he played better than expected last year. I think that he has had an outstanding camp. I think today's practice against the Panthers was sort of his seminal point in terms of just being effective. I think he had like 3 pass breakups today, including 1 in the end zone. Just he's been very impressive. He really has. You got to give him a lot of credit. He has earned that role, which I think is important. I think Belichick was asked today about how important is it to have a number one cornerback, and of course Belichick gave a Belichick answer. But you know, it matters. I mean, the Patriots, I mean, just look at the Patriots' recent history. Since they went away from the zone defense to more man-to-man, because at a certain point in time, Belichick realized these quarterbacks are too good. You can't just scheme pressure, drop into it. Sorry about that. Can't just drop into a zone and hope that they're going to throw it to you. That's just not the way things work in the NFL anymore. And so Belichick, starting with the Aqib Talib trade, started to change. You could even say maybe the Lee Bodden signing even before that, even though Bodden wasn't the world's greatest man corner, he was still a good cornerback. Belichick started to move in that direction. So it was Aqib Talib, who they got on the cheap, added chances in Tampa Bay. He had a good season, cashed in. Patriots didn't want to pay it, or at least not without certain stipulations to make sure he stayed in line, which was always a question with him. So they passed on him. Then they bring in Darrelle Revis, who was basically looking for a 1-year mercenary contract to sort of regain his name and then sign elsewhere, which is exactly what he did. Then it was Stephon Gilmore, who everyone knew he was a good player. No one really thought of him as a top cornerback. And then all of a sudden, Belichick makes a big splash, got him for, you know, a good price, paid him a lot of money, but Belichick wisely, very shrewd move on his part. We're certainly point out the moves that he doesn't make that are very good. So you got to tip your cap and say he gave Stephon Gilmore the money that maybe in that moment he wasn't worth, but he eventually was worth it. In fact, Stephon Gilmore wanted a lot more money, which is what led him to be gone. And then J.C. Jackson, they had in the waiting. He was there. Patriots didn't view him as a top cornerback because they didn't want to pay the freight. And so he was gone, and now they're left with what they have, which is, Jalen Mills. So back to the pecking order. I have it as Jalen Mills, Jonathan Jones, since he's been basically moved there permanently. Terrence Mitchell would be my number 3 guy, even though I'm not enamored with him. Jack Jones, the rookie, has had his moments, gets his hands on some balls, jumped a couple routes the other night against the Giants that he's going to start getting. And then Shaun Wade is an inside-outside guy, but I put him with the boundary group. And sometimes I thought he played really well against the Giants and not so good in the practices. So we'll have to see what that means. At the slot, you have Miles Bryant, veteran, sort of do everything, very smart. Marcus Jones, the rookie, who's coming on strong, who I think they're kind of battling out for the slot position. And then you have Wade there at number 3. So that's sort of the news on Malcolm Butler in the cornerback position.